Do you want to know which wide receivers you should start or sit for Week 15? Well, stick around and we'll tell you. Welcome back, in-game community. I'm Pierre. He's Chris. We're here to break down all the games for Week 15 and talk about the wide receivers who should be in or out of your lineup. There are no more bye weeks. Every team will be in action. And we have 3 Saturday matchups, so make sure that you set your lineups in time. Now, before we get to those games, let's talk about the no doubt must-start wide receivers. Justin Jefferson, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, Keenan Allen, Christian Watson, and T. Higgins if he plays. All right, let's get it going with a Thursday night game. That would be the 49ers and the Seahawks. Well, the Niners are going to be without Deebo Samuel. You know what? He's probably not going to come back until the playoffs. So, what does that mean for Brandon Ayuk?
I think it means you can start him. I don't necessarily love him this week. The Seahawks have been a good secondary. But without Deebo Samuel, you got to think he's going to get more looks, more opportunities. So I think he's startable this week.
Well, I'll say he goes back to kind of being what he was before, and that would be a pretty solid wide receiver 3. You don't really have to worry about not the highest of ceilings, but should definitely get you enough points that he's startable. Kind of a set and forget. So I'll say I feel pretty good about Brandon Ayuk. On the other hand, you should feel really good about the Seahawks receivers who's been on fire lately, including Tyler Lockett. But going against the Niners, how strongly do you feel?
I think you still have to feel pretty good. One thing about the Niners is if they have a weakness on defense, it's 2 receivers. And look, Lockett has been on fire. This passing game has been on fire. I think if you got Lockett, you're starting him.
Yeah, at this point, that boom-bust nature that he's always had, it's kind of gone. He's solid. You can't question it. You start Tyler Lockett. And, of course, I feel the same way about DK Metcalf. He's been just as good. I'm starting him in this matchup.
Yep, agree. Either one of these receivers, you got them, you're starting them.
First game of Saturday will be the Colts at the Vikings. Let's talk about Michael Pittman. Better that Matt Ryan is back, but not a good game the last time we saw him before the bye. Can he do something against this Vikings defense?
He should. I mean, this Vikings secondary is really bad. We just saw DJ Chark and Josh Reynolds have nice games against them. And even Amon-Ra St. Brown was, he was fine. Just not what you want from Sun God. But, Pittman, we know he's going to get a ton of targets. He's got Matt Ryan. I think if you got Michael Pittman, you're starting him.
Yeah, I'll go a step further and say he's a must-start for me this week. The matchup is great. They had the week off. I know recency bias might get a hold of you and say, well, he's done nothing the last couple of weeks. Well, he was off last week, and yeah, it was just they just got blown out by Dallas. You know what? He's going to get the volume. He's got a great spot to really come back and help you win this week, so I really like Michael Pittman. And then there's still Paris Campbell. I mean, it's still a good matchup against the Vikings. You trust him in the playoffs, though?
Yeah, you got to be really desperate only because of the matchup. But in the fantasy playoffs with no teams on bye, man, I'm not doing it.
Yeah, I would say he's a guy, maybe I'll throw in a DFS lineup, but not in a fantasy football matchup where I have to win. I can't do it either. And then on the other side, well, is there going to be any room left after JJ finishes eating for Adam Thielen to get a morsel or something against the Colts?
Probably not, because the Colts do have a good secondary. It's not like, last week where, Detroit is just bad all over. So, yeah, I can't trust Adam Thielen this week. I'm sitting him.
No, Thielen does well against the Lions. Not too great against anybody else this year. I can't trust Thielen either. The Ravens take on the Browns. Well, it could be Anthony Brown at quarterback for the Ravens. Look, they already didn't have any receivers worth talking about anyways. So let's just skip ahead to the Cleveland side. Amari Cooper, well, been banged up. He should play again this coming week. How strongly do you feel about him?
I'm giving Cooper another chance. I feel strongly about him this week. It's the Ravens. They're at home. The Browns, that is. They're at home finally. Deshaun Watson looked better. Ravens secondary still not very good. I think Amari Cooper is a must start this week.
I don't know if I can go that far, but I think he's definitely a solid start this week. I mean, he always has that upside. Obviously, things haven't fully clicked with Deshaun Watson, but I've been saying I think this is the week. Like I said, back at home, he's got 2 games now under his belt. I think we see a step forward from this offense, and the Ravens just could be hurting. So I think he's a solid start. And then Donovan Peoples-Jones, I mean, blow-up game from him. He's kind of been better than Amari Cooper lately. Do you feel like he's a must-start too?
Yeah, I can't go that far with Peoples-Jones yet because, again, back at home, weak secondary, I do think it's a Cooper week, but I think Jones is still a good start.
Yeah, he's emerged as a really solid flex play. I think you have to feel pretty confident in him, so I think he's a good flex. Now let's see what happens when the Dolphins take on the Bills. Rematch of back in week 3. The Bills will definitely be hungry for revenge, and it's on their home turf. So Tyreek Hill, no questions asked. Jalen Waddle, I got questions now. He's not a no doubt must start anymore, as you noticed. He's really done nothing the last 2 weeks, and I worry if he's still hurt because that leg injury he suffered last week. Do you still feel like you have to keep him in your lineup?
Man, this might be the toughest decision of week 15, to be honest, because, like, on the one hand, how do you bench a guy like Jalen Waddle? But on the other hand, like, Tua hasn't looked as good the last couple of weeks. It's in Buffalo. There might be some weather issues. I mean, I think you kind of still have to start him if you have him, unless you have really good options. But man, I mean, I definitely get it if you're terrified.
I mean, there probably are, honestly, a couple of players that we have yet to talk about. I might put in my lineup over Waddle, but for the most part, I think you still have to roll with him because he did great against Buffalo the last time they played. I know Tua has been struggling the last 2 games. It's not an ideal situation either, based on all the factors. But, I mean, you hate to have a guy like that on your bench, and then you see him go off. He's always good for a long touchdown, and you don't want to miss out. So, again, upside wins championships. He's still got it. As long as he's healthy, no indication on the injury report that he isn't, I still feel like he's pretty much a must-start. And then on the Buffalo side, Gabe Davis, been pretty quiet lately. Do you roll with Gabe against the Dolphins?
No way. No, my season on the line, not putting Gabe Davis in my lineup.
The volume isn't there. A dice roll at best. You could flex him out, but I'm not feeling too great about him. Isaiah McKenzie, I mean, I think I feel a little bit better about him, but again, I think he's just a risky flex as well.
Yeah, I feel better about him in the sense that he has a higher floor, but don't like his ceiling this week. I'm not starting Isaiah McKenzie either.
We have Atlanta taking on New Orleans. It'll be really interesting to see what happens to Drake London. If you remember, before the bye week, matched his season/career high in targets and in yardage. He set a new season high, but now he's got a different quarterback. What do you think that means?
I think it means good things for him, but man, I don't think I can trust him in my lineup without seeing it first. I mean, you don't want to put him in your lineup and then find out Desmond Ridder is even worse than Marcus Mariota for fantasy or for whatever. So let me see it first. I'm going to sit him this week.
I mean, I find it hard to sit him coming off the fact that I know they made a conscious effort to get him the ball finally, and then they're obviously trying to do something to improve this offense by benching Mariota, going with the rookie. But how do we know Desmond Ridder is going to complete even half his passes? How do we know he's going to look down the field to London and not just check it down or take off? There's a lot of risk here. So I would say there is some appeal. I think he could be flexed over some guys we've talked about, but at your own risk. On the Saints side, still got Chris Olave there as the number 1 guy. Against Atlanta, this sounds like it's a smash spot, is it?
I mean, it should be, but we're still stuck with Andy Dalton. I don't understand, but it's such a good matchup. You can't bench Chris Olave in this matchup. You got to start him.
Yeah, I think you go with the numbers. Olave, hey, look, they actually put up some numbers a couple weeks ago. I feel like you have to go with Olave as well. I don't feel that way about Jarvis Landry. Just not enough upside here, especially in the playoffs.
No, not starting Jarvis Landry. I need way more upside than that.
Steelers at the Panthers. Will it be Kenny Pickett or will it be more Mitch Trubisky? Well, either way, tell me how that affects George Pickens.
I mean, it doesn't even matter. Like, he's had 2 smash matchups, didn't do anything, whether it was Pickett or Trubisky. I just don't see how you can put George Pickens in your lineup at this point. I'm not starting him.
Agree. The opportunities have been there. I don't think we can just point the finger and say, oh, he didn't have his quarterback Pickett last week. It's not that. The volume has gone away. Nah, I can't start Pickens this week. Deontay Johnson, do you feel any better about him with Mitch?
I mean, I feel better about him because the targets are there and the floor is there, but that's it. He's just a floor play, and this is the playoffs. So, I mean, I guess if you're like in a deep league and you just need a floor, then he's startable, but that's about it.
I mean, don't you want a guy with at least the potential to score a touchdown? He's not doing it. I don't feel great about him. I would just rather keep him on my bench and take a gamble elsewhere. And then what about DJ Moore? Look, very much in doubt, may not play this week. If he does, would you trust him?
No, with a banged up ankle, like allegedly a QB upgrade with Sam Darnold, even though it's not a QB upgrade. Panthers have gone very run heavy. They should be able to go run heavy in this game. I'm not starting DJ Moore.
Yeah, and I think the concern overall is this game is just not going to have a lot of points. Panthers have been doing a good job. Give them credit. Give their temporary head coach some credit. But the offense hasn't been lighting it up, especially in the passing game. Nah, Moore is way too risky. I think you have to sit him. Eagles at the Bears. Look, Devontae Smith making a case to be a guy you just have to start no matter what. He keeps smashing, 3 weeks in a row, I believe, with big games. Going against the Bears, is there any reason not to put him in your lineup?
Only if you're absolutely stacked at wide receiver and you have three of those guys, we talk about in the beginning, but no, you got Devonta Smith, you're playing Devonta Smith.
Weak winning potential, and that's not even an exaggeration. You have to start Smith, especially this week against the Bears. I don't feel like you have to start Chase Claypool, though. Am I wrong?
No chance I'm starting Chase Claypool, no.
The Chiefs will be taking on the Texans in Houston. We'll start with Juju Smith-Schuster, who we said you couldn't start against this tough Denver defense, and so, of course, he went out and had a big game. Does he do it again against Houston?
I mean, this is the week where he should, so I think, if you got Juju, you're pretty much starting him unless you have three really good options.
My worry is that he kind of comes back down to earth because maybe they don't need to pass the ball as much. Maybe this is where the running backs take over. He should have a decent enough floor. I think he's a solid start, but I'm not going to overreact to last week's kind of fluky performance. And then let's talk about Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Start or sit?
No, not starting him.
All right. I thought maybe one of these days, but no, I'm sitting him too. And then there's word that maybe Kadarius Toney makes an appearance and plays. If he does, do you play him?
No way. Coming back from injury, Andy Reid's notorious for slow playing guys coming back from injury. Not starting Kadarius Toney.
I'm definitely not falling for that. No interest in Toney this week. All right, now on the other side for the Texans, I think we got to talk about Chris Moore, who could again be the lead receiver for Houston if their other starters are still out. He had himself a huge game last week, 124 yards. Does that make him appealing in Week 15?
I think it has to, especially that was Dallas. This is the Chiefs. They do not have a good secondary. I mean, Russ cooked against the Chiefs, so not a guy you have to start, of course, but I think, as a flex option, he's solid.
Right. It really depends on who else you got. I'm not going to all of a sudden elevate him over, some known commodities. I do think this is a very interesting guy that you could throw in your flex spot. A lot of appeal here, so I think he could be a very good start. And then Nico Collins may come back. It's too early for us to say, but if he does, do you like him too?
I think you have to. I mean, again, not a guy I'm going to say you have to start, but it's such a good matchup, and he was getting really involved, prior to that injury, and at least Davis Mills is back. So, again, kind of like Chris Moore, a good flex option.
I'm going to agree. A guy you could put in your lineup, again, depending on who your other options are. All right, then them Cowboys are going to take on them Jaguars. What does that mean for Michael Gallup?
Kind of disappointed last week in a good spot. This is another really good spot, though, and we know he has the upside. So I'm going to say, if you need to flex him, you can.
We know he's got some upside. He could get in the end zone, of course, at any point. Jaguars are not a fearsome defense. but you don't know what you're getting with him. So I say he's a risky flex option. Noah Brown made some plays last week, but again, the volume is the question here. Can you trust Noah Brown?
No, I'm not. Even in a good matchup like this, I'm not trusting him.
Yeah, I don't think you can. I'd prefer Gallup over Brown. And like I said, Gallup's risky. Brown is really just a dice roll. I would rather take my chances somewhere else. What about Christian Kirk? You really don't know what you're getting with him ever. So tell me what you expect from him against Dallas.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, honestly, I don't know at this point. But the thing is, he has so much upside. It's hard to bench him unless you have other really good options. So, not a guy you have to start, of course, but the upside is there. So, you can start him.
Well, it's interesting. One of the reasons that Chris Moore, we just talked about, did have a big game. The Cowboys are down with 2 of their starting cornerbacks. And so this defense in the secondary is banged up still. And so I think Kirk could take advantage. Am I counting on it? No. So, as always, a risk-reward play as a wide receiver 3 type. Zay Jones, I mean, he's been better than Kirk the last couple of weeks. Do you feel better or worse about him, or is he just kind of the same?
Yeah, he's kind of the same to me. I mean, another guy, we know the upside is there. We know the potential is there, but there's also real bust potential. So again, an upside flex play.
I think I would still say I put Kirk over him just because we've seen Kirk do it more often. Jones is a risky flex again. I like him better than guys like Gallup. But again, don't be surprised if he gets you 20 points or 2 points. Lions will be facing the Jets this week. Detroit on fire, honestly, and that includes their offense. Let's see if they keep it going. And let's talk about DJ Chark. Now back-to-back really good weeks. Is he a guy who now you feel like you really want in your lineup?
Not this week. I was all over him last week. But this week, on the road, Sauce Gardner waiting, I'm not starting DJ Chark this week.
I'm with you, and a lot of people will look what he did the last couple of weeks. Detroit's winning. Not so fast because, again, this is a prime letdown opportunity for this team, and especially a guy like Chark. So, yeah, I don't think I can do it. What about Jameson Williams? Did catch his first NFL reception and touchdown. Do you think he gets more involved?
No, I mean, he'll get a little more involved, but he still was barely involved last week. He got that fluky touchdown where he's wide open, but that was against Minnesota. This is the Jets in New York. No way am I playing Jameson Williams.
Well, that's the thing. He got that pass, but I think he only got targeted like one other time. I mean, no, you can't. Don't get carried away with that one play. You have to look for guys who are actually getting consistent targets, and it's not him. Not yet. Now, on the Jets side, I think it's fair to say Garrett Wilson is getting a pretty consistent target share. Mike White might not be playing, in fact, looking doubtful for Week 15. So if it's Joe Flacco, does that change your opinion of Wilson?
No, because it's the Lions who just got destroyed. I mean, look, they gave up good games to, obviously, Justin Jefferson, but even KJ Osborne had a pretty nice game. So, yeah, you got Garrett Wilson, you're starting him.
I mean, we're kind of on the verge of saying Garrett Wilson is a no-doubt must-start. I think this week I'm just going to go ahead and put him there. If I have Wilson, I'm starting him, no questions asked. Elijah Moore, we have to talk about him because now all of a sudden what we've been waiting for is here, and that is target share. He actually got 10 targets last week, and now he gets his old buddy, I assume, Joe Flacco at quarterback. Does that make him interesting enough to put in a lineup?
Yeah, I actually like Elijah Moore a lot this week. I talked about it a little bit last week with KJ Osborne on our live show. I said, look, the Lions are really bad against slot receivers, and look what KJ Osborne did. Scored a touchdown. Elijah Moore against the Lions, I'm starting him.
All right, man, even more confidence than me. I'll say he's a high upside flex play. I wouldn't put him in there over some of these other more established receivers, but yeah, you've got to like Moore this week. Let's see if the volume's there. Cardinals at the Broncos. You see that Nuck is a no-doubter now. Hollywood Brown, not quite there. How do you think he does against a still tough Broncos secondary?
Yeah, not a great spot for him, but I mean, the targets are there. we've seen other wide receivers do okay against them. I'm not going to say a must start because of the matchup, but I still think he's a good start.
I mean, obviously on paper, a terrible matchup, but this is a good example of a guy like, let's say, Elijah Moore. I still think I would go with Hollywood over Moore just because he's getting those targets on a weekly basis. I still feel a little bit better about him, so I say you should probably be starting Hollywood Brown. I don't know if I can say that about Jerry Jeudy. Look, everyone's going to say you've got to. Look at what he just did. 3 touchdowns. Do you have to start Jeudy this week?
No, I'm not chasing this. You want to chase it and bank on it again? Like, we might be looking at Brett Rippon starting. Like, everybody thought Russ was bad. Yeah, wait till Brett Rippon's in there. Yeah, not starting Jerry Jeudy.
And that's the thing. If Russ Wilson is not playing, how can you even justify starting Jerry Jeudy? I can't do it. Patriots taking on the Raiders. If Jacoby Myers does return, I mean, he's still the top receiver and probably the only one who's fantasy relevant for New England at this point. Would you trust Jacoby Myers?
No, I'm not doing it. I know it's the Raiders. You say it's a great matchup, but the Patriots spread the ball around. Mac Jones dumps it off to Ramondre Stevenson like 100 times a game. Just no upside for Jacoby Myers. I'm not starting him.
Yeah, I mean, again, should be a great matchup for receivers, but who? And again, if you're trusting Myers coming off an injury, I'm not doing it either. What about Mac Hollins? He's still the wide receiver 2 for the Raiders. For what that's worth, going against the Patriots, is he in the flex conversation?
No, I mean, this is a tough matchup. Just, again, another guy, just no ceiling. I'm not starting him.
No, I think you can pretty much take him out of that conversation. There's no reason you should be starting Mac Hollins this week. Titans will be taking on the Chargers. We hope Treylon Burks is back. If he is, can you put him in your lineup for the fantasy playoffs?
I think you have to against the Chargers. I mean, yeah, like we know he's always got that big play potential. It was a concussion, so it wasn't like, he's dealing with an ankle or something that should bother him. He's really all they have at wide receiver. I think if he plays in this matchup, I mean, not like a must start, but an upside flex play.
Yeah, I'm with you there. You've seen what he can do. You've seen that the Titans, well, they might have to throw the ball more than they want against this Chargers defense, although their run defense is bad enough. Derrick Henry could have another monster game, but still, Burks is a guy who doesn't need really a ton of targets. I think he's a solid start this week if he goes. Now, what about Mike Williams? Came back and, well, hopefully you had him in your lineup because he put up a monster game. Can he do it against this pretty suspect Tennessee secondary?
Absolutely. This is one of those secondaries you just have to attack. Mike Williams, an absolute must start this week.
Definitely. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, fire him up for sure. And then what about Josh Palmer? Is he the odd man out, or do you think there's enough room for him to feed also against Tennessee?
I mean, he's definitely the odd man out, but he was, somewhat involved, and it is a good matchup, but nothing more than like a desperation flex.
Yeah, he feels kind of safe for me. Again, Tennessee giving up a lot of points to wide receivers, but with those other 2 guys there, again, you should probably do something a little riskier to go for more upside. Bengals going to take on the Bucs. You're good with Jamar Chase. You may be good with T. Higgins if he plays. Look, he might not play. Tyler Boyd sounds like he won't play. Does that leave room for a guy like Trenton Irwin, who did catch a long touchdown last week?
I mean, maybe, but he's so risky, right? Without that long touchdown, he's doing nothing. I know the Bucs have been worse against the pass lately, but not enough for me to put Trenton Irwin in. I'm benching him.
Yeah, look, 14-team league, 16-team league, DFS tournament. Yeah, maybe take a shot. 12-team or more shallow, no. You just can't roll with a guy like that. What about Mike Evans? Not only did we take him out of the no doubt must start, but now I question whether you even should be starting him in the playoffs.
Yeah, it just feels like nothing is going right for Mike Evans this year, right? Early in that game, catches a huge long touchdown, called back on a holding call. Later in the game, burns the DB for a touchdown. Tom Brady throws it behind him and at his feet. It just feels like this season, like everything's going wrong for him. And man, but you can't bank on it turning around when it matters most. So against Cincinnati, a tough secondary, I think you have to bench Mike Evans this week.
It's hard to believe we're at that point, but yeah, there's nothing about this matchup which makes you think it'll be any better. And I don't think it's Evan's fault. I mean, he hasn't been hurt. He hasn't been bad. He's Tom Brady. I think that's the issue here, and that's not changing. The offensive line. Anyways, Mike Evans, I mean, you could flex him, but again, there's a lot of risk here, which is still hard to believe. Do you feel any better about Chris Godwin?
I mean, maybe a little bit better, but I don't feel great about him. But at least we know like the targets are there and the floor is there for him at least. So I think you can flex Chris Godwin.
Yeah, I think he's at least a flex play because he's getting the targets. What's interesting is you notice by the time the year ends, I think the second half of the season, we're going to see the leading receivers in Tampa Bay are going to be both running backs. I think both those guys, White and Fournette, are getting more targets and catches than Evans and Godwin, and that's part of the problem. But Godwin at least does have a floor. He is startable. Giants facing off with the Commanders yet again. So let's start with Darius Slayton. Still the top guy for the Giants against the Commanders. Not too bad last time. Do you think he's good this time?
I mean, maybe he kind of is what he is, right? He's a guy you can put in there as a flex with upside. He could bust, but he could also boom. So, if you're looking for that upside potential, go for it.
You said it. High-end flex play. There's risk, but there's also potential reward. I feel pretty good about him this week, but again, not a guy you have to put in your lineup in a 12-team league. And then what about Richie James? I mean, technically he was the leading receiver for the Giants last time, found the end zone. Is he startable?
Yeah, not doing it. Too risky. I'm sitting him.
All right. I am too. Just so inconsistent. That's the thing. And Washington's defense has been fairly good lately, so I'll say no to him. Now, what about Scary Terry? You know that he had a nice game last time these two teams met. Is he a guy that it's a must start?
I can't go that far with him, especially we've seen Washington recently. They've really just tried to establish a run and lean on that ground game, but he's also got enough upside with a decent floor. He's a good start.
I feel pretty good about him this week. Again, at the very least, a high-end wide receiver 3. As long as Heineke's there, you know he's going to look Terry's way. This Giants defense is getting worse each week. I think he's a solid start. Curtis Samuel, never quite know what to expect. What do you think about him in Week 15?
Yeah, week 15, no buys, season on the line. I am not starting Curtis Samuel.
Agree. I mean, you don't want that much unpredictability in your lineup. So Curtis Samuel, it would be hard for me to find a spot in a starting lineup. I imagine the same goes for Jahan Dotson, still pretty much touchdown dependent.
Yeah, not starting Dotson either.
And on Monday night, we're going to see the Rams go to Green Bay. The wide receiver 1 for the Rams is technically Van Jefferson. And look, I know he scored last week, but can you start him against the Packers?
No, good secondary. Needed literally a last-second touchdown to give you anything. I'm not starting him.
Yeah, I don't even care who's the quarterback for the Rams these days. I'm not rolling with any of their receivers. I'll say no to Van Jefferson. I'll also preemptively say no to Ben Skowronek, who was technically their lead receiver last week. You can't start him.
No, cannot start him.
What about Alan Lazard? Now, I guess playing second fiddle to Christian Watson, is there room for him to have a good fantasy day?
I mean, maybe. The Rams haven't been, a great secondary this year, but I just feel like with Christian Watson now, the upside is gone for Lazard, so, flex at best.
Yeah, I think in this matchup, it'd be way too scary to have Lazard in your lineup in a must-win situation, so I would say I'll probably just keep him on my bench. Randall Cobb, you think it's any different?
No, I feel worse about Randall Cobb. I'm not starting Randall Cobb.
And I'm going to agree with you. Not startable for me. Now you know which wide receivers you should be starting or sitting in Week 15. Don't forget to catch all our other videos. Running back, quarterback, tight end, start sit advice, waiver wire, panic videos, and so much more. Check out this playlist right here for everything you need to know to win.